everybody, and welcome to another Agile IT Tech Talk. I am your half host this week. I'm being joined by Kristin San Ramon, as well as Robert Gates, Microsoft Technical Architect, and a true expert on Teams. How are you doing today, Robert?
I am well, thank you.
All right, and you and Kristin have worked together quite a bit, haven't you, in terms of building out our Teams adoption and change management practice?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great focus, and,
Yes.
and we'll definitely touch in on some of the adoption in this conversation today too.
Yeah, and Kristin and I have done a tech talk in the past. I don't know if everybody on the line or everybody watching this video has seen it. Kristin, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Agile IT?
Yeah, sure. I'm a productivity specialist. So what I do is I listen to what people are currently doing in terms of their communication and collaboration efforts, help them build out what it is that they can do better within Teams and other productivity apps within the Microsoft suite. Yeah, that's a little bit of what I do.
Excellent. Well, I am currently out of office. I am in Irvine for the IMCP, that's the International Association of Microsoft Channel Partners. This is their 10th anniversary celebration. We've got a lot of panels on security, on the modern workplace. So this is really beneficial. It's one of the reasons why Agile IT stays ahead of the pack in so many ways, is that we are going to these events and learning things. We've got Microsoft Build coming up here in a couple weeks, and some of our engineers are heading out there. Miguel, who's done tech talks with us in the past, will be out there. So I'm just here to kick things off, and then I'm going to jump back out into the party here and see what else I can learn and bring back home. But I'm going to let you guys take it away. And thanks so much for taking care of this week.
Thank you, Sean.
All right. So as Sean mentioned, my name is Rob Gates. I am one of the technical architects in a group we call the Modern Workplace team. And one of the core focus areas is really deep in and pretty much anything and everything all about Teams, whether it's calling, meetings, sort of the application space, as well as the people side, right? Thinking about how we can leverage Teams from an adoption and change management, really how to transform an organization and take advantage of a lot of the rich teamwork capabilities of Microsoft Teams. I'll tell you, I am super excited about Teams for a variety of reasons. And I think on the chart here that you see on the screen, a couple core aspects is really just the sheer number of opportunities that we could potentially utilize the team's experience to drive change or improvements or increase productivity or create innovation and collaboration across an organization. And I kind of broke it out into sort of three phases, like maybe potentially like sort of enabling core foundational parts of teams, this aspect of empowering the users, and then potentially extending it into line of business. And like when you think about the foundational pieces, there's the voice, the video, leveraging Teams as a meetings platform. There's obviously chat, your standard communication back and forth. And then the piece that is really, really exciting is the teamwork side, because this really gives you the opportunity to transform and change how people work and operate, within departments as well as tasks and functions that happen across departments. The empowerment phase is sort of this next phase or next level on top of that, where not only are you just communicating and collaborating, but now maybe sharing documents or improving, the process or a flow by building in some automation with Power Apps and Flow, or tying in some third-party integrations that are available in the store or that can be added on later. And then as you get to really expand your team's experience, there is the opportunity to really dive into line of business app integration, where we could potentially take data or events or notifications or things that are happening across an environment and pull those into Teams and expose it as in essence using Teams as that central dashboard to an organization. So it's really interesting. Now, the one thing I do want to highlight real quick too is just to keep in mind, Teams sits around a security and compliance boundary. So any of the data that will be coming in via chat or video or meetings or potentially through these different app scenarios, or it could be documents, et cetera, the data does go through the secure compliance boundary. So when you're thinking about security, compliance, and governance, right, it's really great that it's all sitting and built around a lot of the core common tools as part of sort of the Office 365 stack. Now, the thing that we're going to talk about today is really around some of this transformational component, where we've got to get users to change and begin to embrace new ways to work and collaborate. And so, adoption and change management will be a component that is important to help drive the success and the delivery of teams. And there's a lot of different components sort of wrapped around that.
All right, so Rob, quick question here. So what's one of the most common questions that people ask you about Teams?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of different questions that come up because of the sort of the sheer variety and opportunities to apply teams into so many aspects in the business. But I think the one common pattern and question I get is, so is Teams replacing email or Yammer or chat, right? And
Hmm.
what does that mean, or sort of how does that apply? So let me just pull up my Teams demo tenant for a second, and let's talk through a little bit of that. So when I think of could Teams replace email or those other platforms, I don't know if that's necessarily true. And if you have to think about where Teams excels, I think it's when you're in situations where there is just a sheer high velocity of conversation and collaboration, right? Where you've got a group of folks, that's going to be your team. In this case here in my demo environment, Mark 8 project team is a group of individuals that have come together on this particular project. And then you'll see underneath there, there's a bunch of channels. And those channels are conversation threads, right? Nice, neatly, and organized based on conversations. If you think about email, email tends to be organized by date and time. And while you can get creative and create folders and create rules, it's sometimes hard to manage email, right? Especially when you have those reply all kind of conversations. So when you think about it, those really noisy conversations, those high velocity conversations really don't belong in email. They ideally should be in teams, in a team and a channel. And you start to pull out some of those back and forth dialogue conversations, or when you're thinking about document sharing, right? It is very common that folks will send an email with an attachment, and then the recipient would then obviously receive it, make their edits, maybe rename the file V1, V2, send it back. And email is kind of an inefficient way to be really honestly collaborate, right? So would email replace, or would Teams replace email? No, but are there things that we can pull out? And I think collaboration is one. When we're thinking about like chat, right, there are very quick pointed conversations that don't warrant a full email, right? So then maybe we take advantage of the chat platform. And then if you're really trying to be embracing sort of a broad global communication, maybe Teams isn't the right spot. That's where Yammer might come into play when you're trying to share more of that. I think you guys may have heard the inner loop, outer loop example that we've given in some of our keynotes. But folks that you don't necessarily work with day in and day out, but you want to share broad information, that's kind of where Yammer would come into play. Um, but it's really interesting because I think when you think about Teams, there's this component of kind of working out in the open, right? And changing a little bit of how you work and operate. And that's really where you'll start to see some of that success and that transformation.
Yeah, Rob, what do you mean by working out in the open?
So that's an interesting one. And just to clarify, when I say out in the open, I don't necessarily mean sort of publicly or insecurely. But what I mean by that is within these secure domains, for example, the Market project team or sales and marketing team, right, or the store portal, having dialogues and conversations that are within these kind of secure environments, right? Obviously, Teams has security governance and all these other permissions and controls. It ties into data loss prevention. So security is critical, but sort of changing the behavior of when you might have a question or when you might want to collaborate with a document and stuff. So let's take the example of maybe just a question you have. So I had a question for my manager the other day, and he was away on vacation, and I could have sent him an email, right? He would have obviously received it. He wouldn't have been back till Monday. I could have gone into the chat functionality and maybe sent him a chat through the chat function. Again, he's gone for a couple of days, so I won't be able to get my answer right away. In this case, instead of asking it in email or in chat, I opted to go into in our team's general channel, and it was just a kind of a general question overall, but I asked it in the general channel. And by doing that, I actually got my answer within a couple of minutes. It turned out somebody else on the team had the answer to the question. And by me asking it kind of out in the open in this, again, secure forum, right, people were able to learn from it. So not only was I getting my answer quicker than I would have normally because he was on vacation, but I was able to kind of share and educate the rest of the team because of that, asking that question kind of in that out in the open context. And that kind of applies also to documents. So one of the things that kind of my group and I have evolved to over time now is instead of working on documents in silo, we're actually beginning to work more and more on documents that we're putting together for partners and for customers around teams or whatever the work we're doing. And we're actually doing it inside of teams. Now, here's the interesting thing. When I do it this way, I reduce some of my own stress, but I also don't become that bad guy, right? Think about when you're sending an email and you throw an attachment in. You go, hey, could you just take a look at that? I've made some edits or I'm putting this slide deck together. Can you give me some feedback? And so what did I just do? I just became your enemy because I sent you this document, right? And now I gave you a to do, right? And we're all very busy. So instead of me sending documents now and asking people to collaborate, what we've started to do is kind of work out in the open, again, in the secure teams and channels, but working on documents in these collaboration spaces. Now, what's really nice is anybody that's part of this team has the ability to see the document. If they want to review it, they can. If they want to edit it within the Teams client, within the desktop app on their local computer, or within the browser, SharePoint's under the hood that manages and controls all of the documents. And so it allows this real-time collaboration. The other benefit is you also can have conversations specifically around a document. And so here I can open up a conversation thread and people can now converse and give me feedback about that presentation. And this has actually helped. I've had situations where I've posted up a document, my team has joined in, they've seen it, and it's almost natural. Like I'm not asking people to contribute, but people's natural curiosity kicks in and like, all right, what's he working on? Let me take a look. And so they've added slides, content, corrected me on some things that they saw that might have needed to be adjusted based on, info that they had. And so it's really, again, created this interesting collaboration. And then I think one other area that's kind of interesting, let me just pull up, is sort of extending on this kind of having working out in the open. But there's also this concept of having a meeting out in the open. So again, inside of the team, inside of the channels, you can go in to the conversations and schedule a channel meeting. So I can come right here and select the channel meeting option. And here I can go in and either schedule it or have the meeting right here inside of the channel. Now, if I have the meeting inside of the channel, what I can do is basically start my dialogue within the meeting, have the conversation with the folks that I've maybe invited. But here's the key. I started the meeting in the channel. So let me just go back to Teams for a minute. You'll see that I've got this go-to-marketing channel that's up and running, and you'll see this little icon here. This tells people that are part of that team that there's an active meeting going on in the go-to-market plan channel. And you can see that it's very easy to join. I can see over here, in this case, it's just my demo user, but if there were multiple folks in, you could see that the multiple folks are in the meeting, how long the meeting's been going. And at this point, anybody that's part of the Mark 8 project team could join in. And so like a perfect example, Bob from my team, him and I were discussing some developer scenarios for teams. We happen to be in our team's team, and we happen to be in the developer channel, kicked off this channel meeting, and we were conversing and discussing. Now, we didn't invite another person from our team, this guy, Michael, but he happened to see that we were having the meeting, was available, and he ended up joining in. And again, we didn't invite him. We didn't even think of inviting him to this dialogue, but it turned out that we got some valuable information as part of that dialogue. And so, again, working out in the open has really sort of changed the way we work and operate. I think it's helped to drive kind of innovation and maybe even speed and getting stuff done just because we're all able to see and work and collaborate. I kind of almost think about like even the open source developer community from how that grew up from where it was many years ago to today, where it was that openness and that collaboration that really helped drive that community. Well, that's kind of what I'm seeing now kind of in the enterprise. And so that's kind of what I mean by this sort of concept of working out in the open.
Yeah, I love all the features that you just showed, and I also like showing it off to clients as well. And one thing to note here is you did everything within the Teams client. You didn't have to open up a different app. You uploaded the document here, you're chatting about the document in here, you met about something just within this application, and that's what people are always like, oh, that's amazing, I don't have to jump around all the time. And that whole thing of working out in the open, just people contributing whenever they have a chance, because someone that you would even think about actually knows the answer to your question. It's not just that one person that you usually go to. And I love that concept of working out in the open.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And when you think about flexibility wise, right, from the client. So you'll see here in this demo screen that I'm looking at, I'm coming into Teams via the browser. I could have come from the Teams desktop
Hmm.
client, but I could also have been accessing the resources as well from my mobile device. And so I could be
Right.
taking meetings, calls, accessing the documents, collaborating with people in the conversations in many different modalities, which is really exciting. The key, I think, is that you know there is a user adoption and sort of a user change aspect, right? And so we do need to think about as we're deploying teams that, you know, building out a champions program, find those early adopters, right, and drive some of that component and communications and training and governance and even little things like, not over complicating the deployment. Like let's start with some very pointed areas and let's get people used to teams. If we don't want to overwhelm people either, right? So
Hmm.
coming in and be very targeted. Let's take a very specific project or a task or something that an organization's doing. Let's create a team. Let's get people operating, and then as they learn and get more comfortable, it allows you to just really extend and expand. Like I said in that original diagram, you can see there's so many different areas to get engaged with the team's experience.
Oh, yes, definitely. And totally agree with you about having a plan for that adoption and change management, because this is really a new way of working. So, one of the things that we do here with our projects is I will either work with one specific department or a cross-functional team, and we'll, just focus on their specific team. We'll figure out how we want to build out the team and show people how they can uh, collaborate in this new area of tech. So it's awesome.
Great, awesome. So did we want to break into Q&A at this point, or do you want to hit on any other additional topics?
No, I think we can stop the recording. So again, thanks so much for all the information that you shared with us today, Rob. I'm sure like a lot of us have learned a lot of useful and interesting features. So I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us all. I just wanted to remind everybody that Tech Talks is an added benefit for Agile IT clients. We have these every Thursday. So thank you all for listening in today. So at this point, we'll go ahead and stop the recording and open up any lines for questions that our listeners may have.